my presentation, I'm going to present on the theoretical background or working with higher graders on research based on literature work. And so I'm trying to share my slides, but unfortunately I cannot share the slides. So can you see the second slide? No. We can share the slides for you if you want to. Okay, now it's fine. So I want to start with some questions, questions of pedagogics and how the researchers answer this question. So how can we transform information to knowledge? We can do it through reflection, experiments. Knowledge should be based on existing, should build on existing knowledge. How can we build new knowledge? Through research. The research process is complicated. It is too much for the learners. Well, but we can give instructions and clarifications in the process. So what should a learner, a student know about science and scientific knowledge? There are different, the learner should know that there are different forms of scientific knowledge, that scientific knowledge is generated by people and are not just self-discovered, and current scientific ideas may change as new observations and new competing ideas occur. There are various and diverse methods of research because there are different scientific disciplines, and research competencies need to be developed not to become researchers in future, but because research skills are really very useful in everyday life. I cannot change the slide, unfortunately. I'm having a problem once again. Could you please share the presentation for me then?
А презентация, вы не можете, да, поменять слайд?
Нет, не могу, вот никак не могу. Если можно.
So could you please help me?
Надо было бы, чтобы наши
with sharing the screen. Then maybe Hoi, could you help with screen sharing?
Yes.
Can you help?
Yes, just give me a second. I'm already opening the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Julie, are you sharing or okay, you are.
Все видно?
Да, да.
Следующий.
Дайте знать, какой следующий.
Да. Это четвертый, пятый. Вот я буду давать так ручкой, если как превратить в следующий. Еще можно. У меня не видно. У вас слайды идут, да?
Can you see the slides? Can we move the slides? It's because I can see only one slide here on the screen. Yeah, move on. Go on. So why do we need science in everyday life? In order to identify and recognize the truth, to be persuasive, to identify links between different assumptions and the evidence that exists to support these assumptions. So what are the limits of new knowledge and scientific research done by students? So actually the boundaries of students' knowledge depend on the boundaries of the teacher's knowledge. So the students need to open new theories, to open up new ideas and consumptions and to do their own research. But the students' research purpose is not to promote the science, but to open in themselves some new approaches, some new skills of problem solving, and also to develop situational interest, individual interest to certain topics. What is typical for research done in technical subjects? First of all, this is experimental nature of such research, whereas like science history research is based on texts on interpretations of texts. But how can interpretation of a text by a student could help him or her in everyday life situations? So these are all the questions that have been addressed in the pedagogical science over years, and now we need to understand what is the difference between subjects, how humanitarian subjects differ from others. There is a subject, an opportunity to observe a subject, to monitor what is happening to the subject, and subject is perceived from the positions of scientific knowledge, and we are trying to understand the truth in the human existence in a person. And so all the humanitarian subjects have one thing in common: they are person-oriented. They are oriented at presenting the human problematics, everything that is associated with a person, philosophical, experimental aspects of the life of a person. And so most of the research in humanitarian science also target a person and tackle the person from different perspectives. And so again, as I said, the humanitarian science is trying to understand the person, the human, and to try to carry out direct observations over persons. We work with literature, we work with texts, because this is part of the culture of communication between human beings. And when we analyze some piece of literature, we can analyze it from different perspectives, from a disciplinary perspective, from humanitarian perspective, from constructivist perspective. The constructivist perspective actually offers certain ideas, and like, for instance, constructing new knowledge in view of the previous experience. And this is actually an interdisciplinary paradigm, and it is based on individual learning, and new knowledge cannot be accumulated unless certain perceptions are given to the learner how to accumulate new knowledge. And this is something to be done by the teacher. Next slide, please. So we are trying to use a didactic strategy based on research to organize the research activities of the learners, of the students. And one more thing that I want to mention, that we consider a piece of literature in this case as a laboratory where we carry out experiments with the researchers. So we are, again, I repeat, using the didactic strategy based on research that consists of three components. First is the method or a research project, then the means or tools, this is literature, sources of scientific information, and the form, which is analysis. So here you can see the steps for a research project. First of all, this is a combination So this is a sequence of steps within a research project, and we can make a correlation, actually correlation between a learner's research project and a scientific research project. So we can see the identification of a topic or a problem, then design of the research of the study, then conducting the study or research itself with all the documentation, information collection, choice of methods, generalization, summary, etc. Then we have the finalization of the project and delivery of outputs, then presentation and publication. So the idea of the research is not just to understand the meaning of the text that the learner reads, but in the process of reading itself. So the learners have to answer the question not to what to learn, but rather than why to learn. So only when the learners answer this question, why they are learning this or that thing, they can answer the question as to what they need to learn. And traditionally, literature is studied using methods that are specific for literature. And as a result of such research, we always get data about the piece of literature and the author. So what is the result in this case? This is actually a research of a piece of literature. So the question is, why should a learner be interested to know more about a piece of literature, a work of literature? Actually, this is an extra burden, an extra load for the learner. And if the load is too high, too big, then we have the question, should we ask the learners to engage in literature research or not? The answer is yes, we can, but we need to equip the learner with certain tools. Natalia, I'm very sorry, but you have only 2 minutes left. Okay? So we are going to change the object of the study from a piece of literature to a person, not a character from the piece of literature, but a human being as such. And we try to approach a human in the following way. A person as self-perceived, a person versus others, and a person versus the world. So we need to remember that we are not focusing on a character or from a work of literature, but on an individual, on a human being in general. And in this case, the research goes beyond the limits of literature only and become interdisciplinary, becomes very closely intertwined with other disciplines. Because this is what is necessary to present an individual in a multifaceted way. So in this case, as I said before, a piece of literature is not just the object of the study, but is just a laboratory in which we study our object, in this case, an individual. And we try to understand the reasons that influence an individual. Natalia, I'm sorry, but you need to wrap up because your time's up. Okay, yes, time is running, it did. And I just want to again, once again, stress the importance of the fact that the object of this study in this case is individual. The method of study is a research project, And the background, the laboratory for this study is a piece of literature. So we, in this case, use interpretation of the text in combination with some other methods of research. I'm terribly sorry, Natalia, but here you need to stop because the participants should have time to ask you questions, and maybe when answering questions, you might also share the information that you have not managed to share so far. I have 2 slides left, but that's fine. Then any questions to Natalia, dear participants? Any questions to Natalia? You can ask your questions in the chat box. Natalia, I have a question to you because the topic is really very interesting. Have you applied this in practice? Have you piloted this model of research and practice? Yes. At the school, at the lyceum where I work, we started such kind of research in 2018. We carried out our first conferences. We presented the reports of such research projects that we had carried out with our students. And we also attended an online conference with some professors from Tiraspol University. And that was really very interesting, both for our students and for the researchers as well, but for the university faculty, because that showed how kids, how children could analyze literature in a different rules. And when the children made presentations, they shared their conclusions and they supported the conclusions with some arguments. Those were the conclusions that they made on a certain piece of literature, on a fragment of literature. And like, for instance, in that particular case, we tried to focus on literature about love, because those were children 16, 17 years of age, and this is something that interests teenagers in this age. So that's why we chose that topic. And some of our students asked the question on what true love is, and how can we identify true love, and what criteria we can use in our life to understand whether this is true love or not. And so, and they went on reflecting on the topic. And one of the students, a young girl, said that she needed to do a psychological research of the love literature, and she decided to draw a correlation with physics, between literature and physics. Okay, sorry, Natalia, time's up. Thank you very much. And now I want to give the floor to our next presenter, to be delivered by Oscar Diaz and Damiris Aliev. Please, the floor is yours, Oscar. Let me introduce yourself. So the presenters represent the International Agency for Security and Development Agency Center. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity for being here. We, as International Security and Development Center, are very excited of having the opportunity to discuss learning in social matters. So I'm going to present our research on food for education. And in this research, we focus on understanding whether school-based nutritional assistance programs can help improve child nutrition. And for that, we are going to use evidence from Kyrgyzstan. So the main motivation of our research is that there are still substantial challenges on early childhood nutrition and learning. And school-based nutritional assistance, school meals, have become a key form of intervention that has been widely applied around the world by governments. So we want to add to rigorous evidence on the impacts of school meal programs, and also to understand whether the programs have impact on learning and also how they have impact on learning. What are the pathways creating that impact? So our research builds around the Food for Education program in Kyrgyzstan. This program is a multi-component nutritional assistance program that was implemented by Mercy Corps. Its core component is school meal provision, and it has some key additional components that try to impact positively behavior in nutrition, hygiene, and reading. The ways this program, in theory, the program main impact pathways can be summarized into: one is the nutritional channel, and the other one is the economic or the incentive channel. The nutritional channel, the school meals can improve nutrition, can reduce short-term hunger, and can also improve health. All these as key components for learning. But the school meal programs can also change incentives. So parents' incentives to send kids to school can change. Budgetary allocation, because parents don't have to worry anymore for one of the meals every day, and also children motivation because they feel cared of in a school. So around this program, we build our specific research questions and our study. And today in this presentation, what I will do is respond to what is the status of nutrition and learning in Kyrgyz households with grade 1 and 2 children. The second question will be how nutrition and learning evolved during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're in a good position to show some insights on this. And one of the main research questions we answered in our paper is what is the impact of the nutritional assistance programs on child learning? So it's useful to understand the timeline of the program. The program started in 2012 in Kyrgyzstan, and up to 2017, it had collected data. It have intervened, 154 schools. Then our research is going to build in 2 waves of expansion of the program. So in September 2018, Mercy Corps expanded the program to 139 schools. And then 1 year later, the program was expanded again in 2019. So another additional 200 schools were intervened with the school meals program. It is precisely after the second wave of expansion that we collect data of children and their caregivers. We collected specifically 3,000 observations between December 2019 and February 2020. 1 year and a half later, one pandemic later, we collect data for 4,500 children and their caregivers, from which 76% were in the baseline data. So our research builds in 2 quantitative surveys, one that happened in the middle of the 2019-2020 academic year, and the end-line data who builds on after the end of the 2020-2021 academic year. So our research is going to build in 2 quantitative methods. The first quantitative method, we are going to evaluate the status and the evolution of key nutrition and learning outcomes between the phases, between the baseline and the end line, how it changed. And we are also disentangle the impact of the Food for Education program, the school meal program. And the way we are going to do this is that we are going to use the difference in timing of the program rollout to estimate the impact of the program. So as I say, just to make it clear, in 2018, some schools were intervened, and in 2019, an additional set of schools were intervened. This created a natural experiment to that varied the timing of the exposure to the program for some children, and we're gonna build on that. But apart from that, we also build on qualitative methods. Our research includes 3 qualitative surveys before, between, and after our quantitative surveys, and it helps to inform the quantitative design and testable hypothesis. So before going to answer the research questions, it's important to highlight, well, the elephant in the room, something that happened between our surveys. So the graph in the left shows the school status in Kyrgyzstan during the 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 academic years. And it shows in red the number of months that the schools were closed, and also in blue, the numbers of months that the school were partially open. So there has been some disruption. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted many things in our life, including the program implementation and also children's learning because of school closures. And it also disrupted or challenged our research design. But it also gave us the opportunity to understand better what were the causes of the pandemic, because as you can see here, our baseline data collection happened just before the start of the pandemic, and our mainline happened 1.5 years after. So coming to the research question on what is the status of nutrition and learning in Kyrgyz household and how that evolved during the pandemic, we start with nutrition. We find that caregivers' knowledge status improved over time, but also that the level of knowledge is not that high. Only 60% of the households have knowledge about good knowledge about what are nutrient-rich foods in vitamin A. And another example is only 23% of the household had good knowledge about vitamin C-rich foods. What is interesting is that we see an increase in participation in the nutritional training, and at the same time, we see an increase on knowledge. So because this is a panel sample, because we are interviewing the same people before and after, it's safe to say that the training is having some impact in caregivers and parent knowledge. The second thing to say in nutrition is that we evidence that Kyrgyz households exhibit good diet practices at home. Many households have diverse and nutrient-rich diets, and we also see some improvements between the baseline and the end line. This can be either because of knowledge increased of parents, or also there may be some reasons related to seasonality. In terms of children nutrition practice and knowledge, our research shows that many children exhibit good knowledge on nutrition. In general, for example, in the end line, we find that 80% of the students had good knowledge about why sweets are not good for health, and that sweets are not good for health, and also that why they are not good for health. But however, we also focus on practices, and we see that most of the kids snack between meals, and they rather snack on healthy foods. So the probability of snacking on healthy foods is bigger than the probability of snacking healthy foods, and that's something that we find in our research. Now, I'm going to talk about learning outcomes because I guess this is the most interesting part for the conference. And before going to that, I just want to emphasize how the research happened, the moments where the data collection happened. So as I said before, the baseline data collection happened in the middle of the academic year, and the end-line data collection happened at the end of the academic year. So if we compare second graders' age, that's what I do in this graph, we see that in the end line, second graders are half a year older, meaning that in principle, they had also half a year more of education of a school. They should have gone to the school more time. And this is important to interpret the results because it means that the second sample, the end line sample, have more time in school. What we find in learning outcomes is that first, that less than half of the students in second grade can read with comprehension. Only 42% of our sample could read a second grade text with comprehension. But what is more striking is that 1 year and a half later after, we see no changes in capacity to read with comprehension over surveys. So this is striking because in the second year, we are talking about older kids that had half a year more of education, academic year. So when we study these results a little bit more, we encountered that the disruptions in learning were mostly on second grade students. So this graph shows the distribution of the literacy scores between baseline and endline, and we see an improvement over time for first graders and significant improvement. But when we do the comparison of the literacy scores for second graders, we don't see an improvement, and we actually see a deterioration. So what it means is that even if these students were older and had more time in school, in principle, they didn't learn, they learned less than the students that did second grade in 2019 before the pandemic. We control for individual characteristics, we control for other aspects, and these conclusions result. So the bottom line here is that second graders were more affected by school closures than first graders. And that's something we can find in our results during the pandemic. Now, our main focus of the study was understanding the impacts of the school meal program. So we have on one side the pandemic hitting hard, but also on the other side, a school meal program that was introduced that maybe had helped students to cope better with their learning. And what we did is to play again with this difference in timing of program rollouts. So here, maybe this graph helps to understand a little bit better. The whole idea is that when we see students in September 2019 that are in grade 2, if they were a student in schools that where the intervention started in 2018, they had received the school meals when they were in first grade. But students that we observed in grade 2 in September 2019 that studied instead in schools where the intervention started in 2019, they didn't receive the program when they were in grade 1. So that's the main difference, where we base the difference on the research. And well, if we just compare these two groups, if the intervention was random, we could say that it's because of the intervention that the difference happened. But the problem is that apart from program exposure, the difference between these two groups also captures any difference between the two groups. And we know that the intervention was rolled out first in schools that were better prepared for implementation. So there was a structural difference for that. So we're gonna build on a second way of research that happened 1 year after in the end line. And the difference that happened in that moment is that all second graders have received the program in grade 1. So that difference doesn't appear anymore. So we're gonna build a grade 2 panel, and I use a difference approach as econometric method. And this is going to control for the time invariant structural characteristics between these two groups of schools. The bottom line is that we want to understand whether there was a difference in the evolution between school groups. When we see the learning outcomes difference evolution over time, we get some sense of maybe some potential impact of the school meal programs. So in this graph summarizes pretty well what we are finding. 2018 schools had higher numeracy scores than 2019 schools. In both type of schools, second graders numeracy score improved over time. But if you can see, the slope of the 2019 school is bigger. So that means that the schools where the program was just introduced evolved better than the schools where the program was already there. So maybe the program was pushing those students up. If you want to compare the slopes easier, this is just the same graph, but it started from the same points, and then you can see that the slope is bigger for students in 2019 schools. What happened in literacy score? Well, as I saw before, second graders even decreased their literacy score over time. So we see that for both 2018 schools and 2019 schools, the scores deteriorate over time. But what we can see that is interesting is that it deteriorated more for students in 2018 schools. So students where the intervention you has started deteriorated less than the students where the intervention had already been in place. So maybe suggesting some impacts of the intervention. Here is again the graph where it compares the slopes and shows that 2018 school students deteriorated more in literacy scores than 2019 school students. We continue the analysis, including different responses to COVID, including school level individual fixed effect characteristics. And we find basically the same idea, the same conclusion. Outcomes improved more or deteriorated less for second graders in 2019 schools, in the schools where the intervention started in 2019, compared to outcomes in 2018 schools. So this is, even though we find that the evolution was only significant, statistically significant for inhibitory control. So just to wrap up some conclusions, we have a very good data set that provides us with good information about what happened during COVID, and also that tries to evaluate the program of the Food for Education program. We find that a household has good nutritional practices. In Kyrgyz households, there are good nutritional practices that we don't find evidence that were affected by the pandemic. We see that caregivers improved their nutritional knowledge due to the SBC nutrition training, and also we find evidence of learning outcome losses due to COVID-19, especially for second graders. And I think that's going in line with the government policies, because they give priority to first graders when it was about school closures. And we find preliminary findings suggesting that those students that just have started receiving the program of the school meal programs were perhaps better equipped and had a positive impact of receiving these school meals for having a positive impact on learning. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. I hope I was good with time. We appreciate any feedback and also any clarification questions. I'm sorry, maybe this was very fast, but I was trying to bring a lot of information into it.
Oscar, thank you very much. It was perfect timing. And we have 5 minutes for questions from the audience. Dear participants, you can write your questions in the chat. Any questions? Probably it takes time to type the questions in the chat. While participants are typing, I have a question, Oscar, to
Yes,
you and your
perfect.
team. Yes, the results are impressive, but I'm wondering what could be possible implications for education policy at the local level? How this program can be sustained to have this impact, long-lasting impact?
So I think the program was implemented by Mercy Corps, but the idea is that Mercy Corps will help to set up and maybe help with the idea that in the future, the government will continue with the implementation of a school meal. And what I think is interesting about the research is that it can give us information on the pathways, how the program is having impact. So maybe it's having impact because it's improving nutrition, or maybe it's having impact because it's improving school attendance. So having this knowledge is important to do better policies. And I think this type of programs that are widely implemented around the world are only sustainable if they have the support of the government. They're most likely to be sustainable and also targeting the most vulnerable students.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Any other questions from participants? Damir, we still have time for one question, but if no questions, maybe you would like to add anything you think would be important for the audience to know.
He cannot unmute his microphone.
Спасибо большое. Я буду, наверное, на русском говорить.
Yes, thank you very much. I will be speaking Russian. So just wanted to say that this is actually an impact assessment of the Food for Education. project and its efficiency in the first grades of the school, the government committed to ensure this implementation of this school of this program in all the schools, and donors, Mercy Corps that has been mentioned, helped with this program, equipped and repaired the canteens at school, etc. So this program has been on for 2 years. And of course, the caregivers, the schools should continue with this intervention in future in order to make it sustainable. Of course, it is understandable that this intervention is a kind of support not only to schools, but also to households. And that's why we can see the impact on the caregivers, on the institutions, and even on learners. Of course, maybe the results are not as impressive as we expected them to be, but again, as we said before, the period is too short to make conclusions. But even within that short period of time, we could see the difference in outcomes between second graders who started receiving our assistance from grade 1 and between those kids who started receiving the assistance only a year ago. Okay, I think this is a very good food for thought for the authorities to think about sustaining this program in future. Thank you very much.
And now we have our next presenter, Mrs. Natalia Orekhova from Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools. Natalia, the floor is yours, please.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Мы будем
Hello, dear
презентовать.
colleagues. We are going to present together with my colleague, Bigatina Perizat. We are colleagues at the Center for Educational Programs at the Nazarbayev Intellectual School. Our research is not very global, very wide in scope, but quite important. And we wanted to share the ideas that we discovered in the course of our studies. We developed natural science textbooks for the lower classes for primary school, and wanted to study how these textbooks improve students' research skills. And here is what we are going to discuss today. Currently, we see a change from the reproductive approach of education to more creative forms. And according to the Kazakhstan model, instruction needs to develop students' research skills. But we want to talk about why these research skills are important and talk about what resources there exist to develop research skills and how they can be applied in distance learning. As we know, children in primary schools are researchers by nature, motivated by their natural curiosity. And the concept is that the curiosity of young children needs to be encouraged. And this can lead to an understanding of science and the natural world around them. According to Harvard Business Review, research skills and curiosity can help to develop many important skills. And during our lessons, we cover knowledge about different tools, research methods, children's ability to interpret data and present the results of their work. We had 2 areas of research, teaching and learning. In particular, we studied teachers' meetings focused on planning lessons, choosing methods and forms of teaching, the grading systems, choice of resources to organize the work of students during lessons, and distance learning. And we also studied how practical work affects the learning success, motivation to study, and motivation of their research approach to solving problems, and also interaction with parents and the safety and development of children. As for learning, we studied how students understand what research is, whether they are able to plan their research either with a teacher or individually, what methods and forms of research they
результаты своих исследований и какие навыки презентации у них присутствуют.
in what form they present their research results, their presentation skills, and also how their practical work affects their motivation to study, ability to interpret subject knowledge, and interactions with peers. Our research was based on two schools, a general public school in one school and the Nazarbayev Intellectual School of Physics and Mathematics in Taldykorgan. The curriculum in these two schools was different. And the question, what lessons do you use, what subjects do you use research skills for? We got different answers to this question. For example, math, natural sciences, understanding the world, Russian language, Kazakh language, physics, and art. And so the intellectual schools showed that they use research methods both in natural sciences and also in the arts and PE. And so we can see that there's more of an emphasis on research skills in the second school. As we diagnosed the formation of research skills, we found that all students know what research is, and this is part of the curriculum, but only 33.7% take part in practical research in the classroom. But only 12.5% can plan and conduct research on their own. Also, our diagnosis showed that there are differences between these two schools in terms of both at the basic level of the research skills can be found at the intellectual school, but in terms of productivity, the other school is ahead. The methods which students choose to conduct independent research are also different. The general school pupils prefer to work with information sources and then process those sources. But in the intellectual school, they prefer experimentation and modeling and like to present their results in an audio file. So they're using modern technologies to present their findings. And so the results we obtained showed that the pedagogical conditions which exist in these schools affect research skills. And we can find this is reflected in the curriculum and also in specific pedagogical methods and forms of organizing educational activities in the classroom. We also see differences in the teachers or more of a reproductive instruction style. And we think that the textbooks play an important part in this, because in the intellectual school, children use a different textbook. And they use the textbook that we have developed. And in the general school, they use some of our textbooks and some of the general textbooks. The reason this is important is because we are continuing to work on these textbooks and improve them. In particular, the textbook on natural science, we would like to see reflect the proper diagram, the proper model of research skills. And so we put into this textbook this model, this cycle of research, asking a question, collecting information, finding an answer, presenting and discussing, and then reflecting. Often during reflection, students raise new questions, which can be the foundation for the next cycle of research. At this point, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Perizat. Hello, my name is Perizat Tigazina, and I will continue the subject which Natalia began. Because we're working on curriculum, we wanted to support curriculum with our textbooks. Natalia's talked about this fact, and I would like to tell you a bit more about our textbooks. Our team at the Center for Educational Programs has developed textbooks for primary schools, including basic science textbooks for the second and fourth grades. Natural sciences was included in primary school after a curriculum reform several years ago. And so the contents of the subject were a bit unclear and are new for teachers of elementary schools. So we have a textbook, a teacher's guide, and a notebook that go together. They're a set. In the curriculum, the natural sciences program includes steps to form research skills. For example, in the first to fourth grades, the goal is to propose ways to find answers to science questions. And this is what the textbook proposes to students. For example, how can you identify whether a plant is alive or not? Next, the textbook asks the question, for example, how can you tell that air surrounds us? In the third grade, the question is a bit more complicated. So how can you remove the leaf of a plant and separate some parts of a plant? In the fourth grade, the question might be, which of these two hypotheses is correct? Conduct an experiment. So these questions are becoming more and more complicated with each year. The textbook proposes different tasks which the pupils use to learn about research methods such as observation, experimentation, and measurement. These tasks, instructions for these tasks are given to the teacher in a special teacher's handbook. Also, the textbooks include tasks, modeling tasks, modeling, designing, and the textbook is geared to promote the values and goals of the curriculum and include Also some local components which help students to learn more about their homeland in the area within the area where they live. Also, we know that for children, it's very important for children to learn to work with information. And so our textbooks include tasks which help build their skills, their information processing skills, their ability to validate information. Just 1 minute left. Also, the textbook includes tasks which help to work with non-textual information, for example, working with diagrams and graphs. This page shows here that there's an integrative approach to different types of information. In Kazakhstan, in rural areas, internet is very poor, and so there's some AR apps. There's an AR app that's augmented reality app that students can use even offline. We had a video that we wanted to show you, but I think we don't have time. If we have a bit of time at the end, we will ask you to show the video. Thank you. Thank you very much. Your questions, dear colleagues? Perhaps our participants have some questions.
Дорогие
У
участники,
Дамира.
5 минут.
Мгм.
Да, Дамир, пожалуйста.
Yes, Damir. Thank you very much. I didn't have a microphone and now I do. Thank you for the presentation. It's very nice to see that primary schools are developing children's talents and helping them to develop. I live in Germany. My children study here and have participated in very broad national initiatives such as Young Scientists or something like that. And it's very interesting that any child who wants to participate, who's interested in this, shares this idea with the teacher, shares an idea with a teacher, and starts to work on it. And I think it's a wonderful idea that could be applied in our countries as well. How feasible is this, in your opinion, considering that these initiatives and ideas are being promoted in your schools? It would be wonderful for children to get the chance to propose and develop their own research questions. For example, my own child learned to grow crystals. Thank you, Amir, for this question. It's really relevant for us as well. As I said, a lot depends on the teacher herself. Because this is a new subject, the teachers often don't know how to prepare for lessons, how to gather resources that are that the students can use when they go home and without having to use expensive equipment to conduct an experiment. And so we are developing these practical guidelines for teachers. And because of the pandemic, we have a project, an online school project, where all lessons for primary classes, primary education, were recorded on a special online platform. And we were lucky to be a part of this program, recorded the practical parts of these experiments in order to involve both pupils and teachers and show them that it's quite easy to set up and motivate pupils, students to do this. And so your idea that a student can come to the teacher and say, I would like to research this or that, that I think is the ideal situation, and we need to endow our teachers with more with the capability to handle that type of work. When we meet with teachers, conduct math.
Мы с ними вместе приходим к одному выводу, что предмет сначала они говорят.
First, they say that it's a difficult subject, and then during discussion, we find that the subject is also difficult. It's difficult for adults as well, but they find that they like this subject a lot. We give our teachers, in addition to
В руководстве поэтапно каждое задание, как выполняется, дается инструкция, вплоть до таких материалов.
And so, for example, the teacher can use these materials in their teaching, and this has helped our teachers a lot. Thank you very much. You have 1 minute left, and we have a question here from Oscar Diaz. He says, usually boys are more interested in pursuing science than girls. What do you think could change this tradition? In order to provide for gender equality, we include two characters in our book, two heroes, one male and one female. And this shows that both girls and boys can be involved in research. We don't have much time, so let's leave that last question to the end of our session, and maybe we'll have the chance to show our video.
Мы разрешим сперва продемонстрировать видео, которое интеллектуальные школы Назарбаев подготовили, а потом уже перейдем к обсуждению.
Так, хорошо, да, сейчас я подключу презентацию. Так, отображается все?
Да.
Так, минуточку. Я сейчас проверю, чтобы демонстрация была со звуком. Угу.
И вы представьте себя участником, о чем это видео.
В этом видео представлен учебник естествознания для 1 класса, и также мы в него включили фрагменты уроков с уроков, проведенных в начальной школе по предмету. Естествознание – это совокупность наук о явлениях, закономерностях природы и методах исследований. Изучая его, первоклассники будут открывать для себя окружающий мир. Сделать данный процесс познавательным и интересным поможет учебно-методический комплекс естествознания для 1 класса. Содержание учебника ориентировано на приобретение знаний через практическую деятельность. Отвечая на вопрос, что такое движение, ученики 1 класса проводят эксперимент, фиксируют результаты и делают выводы. Подобная деятельность ставит учащихся в позицию исследователя, и дети учатся принимать себя.
teaches them to be researchers. And from the first grade, children are taught how to understand and apply different research methods. For carrying out research, learners apply and use sources of information and their own judgments. They observe, they record, document, and present the results. Let's put our smartphone on the lid of the container and try to make noise in the water within the container and record the audio. Okay, the learners also do modeling, operate the models, and make conclusions. Methodological recommendations for fulfilling the assignments in the learners' books are set out in the teachers' books. And the teaching material in the book is systematized, and scientific knowledge is reflected in a system of questions and assignments. It also includes text, illustrations, and different tabs. Information is also presented as augmented reality, and the learners might use virtual applications to visualize objects of the environment. It is also very important that the book is learner-oriented. It motivates, it integrates the knowledge, influences the development of values, self-control and self-regulation skills, and teaches the learner to try to obtain knowledge themselves. Research projects are very natural for small children. Our book supports these research skills and teaches the learners to learn from practice. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention and for the opportunity.
Dear participants, we have some time to have a discussion around 3 presentations you had. And I appreciate if you can raise your questions, or you can share your thoughts about presented ideas.
Может быть, тогда я задам вопрос.
Давайте,
Спасибо
давайте.
большое,
I would
Наталья.
like to ask a question. Thank you very much, Natalia, Berizat, for the very interesting presentation. I do realize that you focused more on Nazarbayev intellectual schools, but as I was listening to you, I thought that the TIMSS survey carried out in grade 4 and grade 8 shows really great results in Kazakhstan. And I would like to hear it from you. What are the reasons for that? So these educational programs, updated programs, have been implemented in our schools starting with 2014. And we develop our textbooks not only for secondary schools. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. So it's not only for public schools, secondary schools, but you know, when we issue books, for instance, these books go through a process of attestation to become accepted at public schools. And by the way, today all the schools in Kazakhstan use
только 4 класс обучается по данным учебникам. Думаю, что за эти годы и наша просветительская деятельность как-то
so we are happy to mention that we have had a positive impact on the educational system in general in the country. Would you like to add anything? Perizat, you know, yes, I wanted to answer the previous question about boys being more encouraged to go into research, natural science research than girls. I don't want to speak for long now, but I can tell you that Natalia and I are teachers at elementary school. But then between grades 5 and grade 9, you know, the most of the school children have a educational crisis, so to say. This is a period that they lose the willingness to learn, but at the same time, a lot of science-related subjects are being introduced to them, like physics, chemistry, biology, and others. And that might be the reason why they get discouraged to learn, to continue learning the subjects. And I remember that in grade 3, for instance, we had to teach gravitation to our school children, and I remember how interested girls were in the subject and how active they were participating. So I do hope that after the reform, the girls would be more and more engaged and encouraged into science. Also, the question is if the toolkit is available to the public. Yes, the PDF format textbooks have been uploaded to the websites of the educational institutions and the ministry. Okay, any questions to you or any questions to previous presenters? Just a sort of a reflection on previous presentations. Participants, dear participants. Damir, did you go through the reflections and questions on your presentation in the chat box? So there is a question about how realistic it is to implement this initiative into practice. Is it a question to us? Yes, I think so. It's realistic, and we have been implementing and we have been using our books in practice. I, for instance, coordinate the use of the same book in the Kazakh language. So this is actually a basic textbook for grades 2 to 4. Of course, the pandemic has affected us all, though Natalia and I are really thankful to the pandemic because of it, we could actually make videos of our science history lessons, like 5 to 7 minutes each, and we can get access to, you can actually get access to these videos. They are freely available on our school website. So that was really a benefit of the pandemic for us and for our studies. And you can also write us personally. We could share our results with you. Hoi?
Hoi, can you help? Damir would like to share something, but he does not have mic.
There he is. Okay, I'll make you the co-host.
Спасибо большое. Я не уверен, что там...
Yes, thank you. I'm not quite sure that there was a question directly to us in the chat box, but Tamira Batembaeva is asking a question about the equipment for the experiments, but I think this is again a question to Kazakhstan. Yes, we can answer this question in our teacher's book. When we compile teacher's books, we usually add a chapter called resources, and we list different kinds of resources. Again, we try to choose those sources that can be easily accessible and available to teachers and students. Like, for instance, in the video, you could see an experiment, the nature physics or natural physics, like how sound spreads in water. You remember that we asked the students to put their smartphones on the lid of a container and record the sounds made in the water and compare sounds made in water to sounds recorded when passing through air, and then to make conclusions. So and then we offer our students, our learners, to fill in tables or matrices or draw diagrams or pictures. And these are actually the instructions and recommendations included in the teacher's book. There is one more question from Mamura Yusupova to you. Are these textbooks used in the general education schools or only in Nazarbayev intellectual schools? Because you mentioned the difference between research skills among students of general schools and Nazarbayev intellectual schools. I want to repeat that this specific textbook, really informative indeed, as Mamura mentioned, are used in general education schools from grades 1 to 4 in the schools where Kazakh is the major language of instruction, and also in Russian-speaking schools starting from grade 2. And another question is if we can buy the teacher's book. Yes, you can buy these books from our niche sites, NIS sites. Could you please share a link? Yes, we can. My question is to Oscar and Tamir. In our work in countries, we frequently come across situations when there are some great ideas, some good pilot projects that give really good results, but then the governments, for several reasons, also including the lack of funds, fail to roll out these good pilot initiatives further on. So what would you say about that? What would you say about the obstacles?
Давайте я начну, может, Оскар еще что-то добавить. Я совершенно с вами согласен.
Okay, then maybe I would start. Indeed, I agree that there are a lot of pilot projects in our countries, really very good pilot projects, but unfortunately, they ended up being pilot projects only and never got rolled out. And indeed, this is a serious challenge. The project that we have shared with you is in reality the stage just before rolling out this program to all the schools in our country. So Mercy Course actually helped the government to draft a law on nutrition, school nutrition. And the research that we conducted was actually the final phase of evaluating the outcomes of the program, of the nutrition program at schools. So we do hope that the local government, the caregivers, the Ministry of Education will manage to continue with the program in future and will keep the quality, the level of the program, because Mercy Course is telling us they are going to exit, to withdraw in 2 years. So they are here just to introduce a sustainable system, and then the system has to be transited to the government. So we will wait and see how it goes. But again, we do hope that the national budget, the local budget, and the funds of caregivers would be sufficient altogether to continue implementation of this nutrition plan and nutrition program in future. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to add to what Damir said, if I may. May I?
Да, конечно.
May I? Yes, sure. So I'm an elementary school teacher, and I, for instance, asked my students to make a research about how eating porridge in the morning influences their learning outcomes at school. Because at our school, children got porridge in the morning for breakfast, but they didn't want to eat it. And after we conducted the research, we were actually observing how the porridge was cooked. We tried to investigate what kind of micro elements porridge contained, and we presented the results to the parents. We involved the entire school into that project, and after that, children no longer left the porridge in their plates during the breakfast. Well, okay, thank you for sharing the links. And I just wanted to say that there are still some dilemmas in our countries, when on the one hand, we have really very good schools in a country, and there are just ordinary schools in the same country. The two categories representing the system of education at the national level. So I wonder if the countries have visions about how to fill in the gap between good education and not so good education within one and the same country, how to bring together these two categories. The experience of NIS schools is rolled out to the country. Usually, there are some books that we initially elaborated only for the purposes of our schools, Nazarbayev intellectual schools. But then a decision of the Ministry of Education followed, and they decided to use the same textbooks, the same books for all schools at the country level. So we start with some niche projects, niche toolkits usually, and then these become just generally accepted textbooks or methods. Like in 2009, 6 schools were, 6 NIS schools were opened, and those schools also had elementary schools, so first grades up to 5th grade. But today, NIS schools only offer education starting from grade 7. I just wanted to say that introduction of natural history as a subject to general secondary schools is something that NIS initiated. And again, even though we are no longer going to have elementary school grades at NIS, we are going to start only with grade 7th, but still we did such kind of research. We elaborated the textbooks for elementary school grades and proposed the textbooks to the national schools. Okay, thank you to our participants. And I think we have one more question again to you again, I think. But before that, I wanted to ask Yulia, do the participants know how they should join the last session, concluding session? Yes, please pay attention that we are going to have the concluding session right here in this room in the session 16th room. That's why our colleagues are joining in. So we have to wrap up with this session and to start our closing session. You have still 2 minutes before the closing session starts. Okay, 2 minutes, Natalia Perizat, you have 2 minutes to answer the last question. This is a question about the video, and the question is if the video can be downloaded. During the pandemic, the videos were freely accessible from YouTube and also from the official Ministry of Education channel. So kids had a certain timetable when they could get access to the videos. And of course, I think everything is possible if there is an interest on behalf of the Ministry of Education in a country. Okay, we are done. So thank you very much. Thank